I want to share a quick lesson about mushrooms. So the other day I was doing a mushroom trip and a lot of resistance came up in the first 2 hours. And I just remember sitting there and just being so frustrated with myself because I felt like I should be doing better in this trip. Like usually I'm quite good about surrendering to the mushrooms. I'm very good at having a smooth experience. And for whatever reason, I was really struggling in the beginning of this trip. And I just remember sitting there and basically apologizing to the mushrooms and saying, I'm so sorry. Like, I have no idea what's going on. Like, I have no idea why. I felt like I wasn't getting the lesson that they were trying to teach me. I felt like I was banging against this metaphorical wall. And I was being in my ego. I was being in some sort of negative state. And I felt like the solutions were there. They were close. They were vibrationally close, but I wasn't getting it. And it was so frustrating. And two things helped me out in that. And maybe this will help someone who is going through resistance in their mushroom trips. One thing that helped was at some point I looked at my phone and I always set a timer the moment I take the mushrooms. And the timer said something like 40 minutes or 15 minutes. And that alone already helped. I was like, okay, it's only been 40 minutes. So of course, I'm in the struggle phase of this trip. Like there's usually, it takes 2 hours, sometimes longer, to really hit the point where you're soaring, you're gliding, you're in the flow of the trip. So anything that's, from 0 to 60 minutes, even 0 to 90 minutes, that's still the ascent. That's still the very beginning of the trip. And if you're not succeeding in the trip, or you're not getting some sort of lesson, or you're fighting the mushrooms, or you're resisting them, and it's only been 40 minutes, I realized, okay, this is normal, and it's nothing out of the ordinary, and let's see what happens in the next hour. Like, if it had been 4 hours, then I might have been a little bit, concerned. But it's only been 40 minutes. The mushrooms have barely, they have kicked in, but they've barely kicked in the way that, that truly opens up your heart and truly opens up your mind to new perspectives. And the ego is still very much online for me for the first hour. So that was the first thing that helped, was just being aware that this is just the beginning of the trip. The second thing that helped was, at some point I went to the bathroom, and even in the bathroom, I was like, I leaned against the wall and I was like, man, like, what? I'm not getting it. Like, whatever is going on right now in this trip, I'm failing this trip. There's so much resistance. There's so much, just feeling like I'm supposed to be getting some lesson and it's not coming to me. And I had this realization, which is going to sound so funny and so simplistic, but I had the realization of, well, yeah, this is why we're doing the mushroom trip. Like, the fact that it's difficult right now is precisely why we're going on this journey, so that we can find the answers, so that we can, and also the realization that let's give it some time. Let's give it a few more hours. Not that you have a choice when you're already in the middle of the trip, but yes, I'm not getting something right now. And it feels super frustrating. And I can feel my own resistance. But instead of trying to speed up the process, why don't I just be patient and do nothing? Like, if nothing is coming through, where I feel like I'm facing some impasse, some sort of block, okay, then let's just sit and wait and let the mushrooms work its magic. As much as we like to take credit for doing the inner work, whether it's on a mushroom trip or outside of a trip, in this scenario with the mushrooms, you really can just sit back and let the psilocybin work through your system and see what happens. And that's what I decided to do. I was like, look, I'm really resisting this. But why am I trying to speed up the process? Why am I expecting to get the breakthrough in the first 40 minutes when the trip has barely begun? Yes, I'm facing a lot of resistance right now, but why don't I just relax and sit still and do nothing and let the answers come, whether they come in an hour or 2 or 6 hours. Let me just sit and do nothing. Let me stop struggling. I think it's a big lesson, not just for the mushrooms, but in life. Some of the worst mistakes I've made in life was when I was in a very negative state, and instead of pausing and standing still and doing nothing and letting the waves calm down, I made a decision from that negative state. And whenever you make a decision from a negative state, it never goes well. It never goes well. But if you can train yourself to just sit still in the midst of chaos and just do nothing. Doing nothing is better than doing something when you're in one of those frustrating roller coasters or when you're facing a lot of negative emotion. Just simply do nothing. Simply sit still. And that's what I did in the trip. And lo and behold, I think it took an hour or so. I stopped paying attention to the time, but the breakthrough started happening. The cleanup of the mind started happening. The answers started coming through. And just like it always happens for me, by the end of the mushroom trip, everything became clear. Everything became light. All the answers I wanted came through. The frustration dissolved. The negativity dissolved. The heart opened up. The mind opened up to new perspective. And this was my second trip ever, which I also did in silence. So you might remember a previous video where I turned off the music and I just spent the whole trip in silence. And this was one of those two. I started it with music. I felt so much frustration. Nothing sounded right. None of the tracks, it just felt off. And paused the music, turned it off, and just sat with myself and let the answers come through. So I wanted to share this piece for anyone who experiences difficulty on mushroom trips, to encourage you to think of it as normal. It's part of the process. Don't judge the resistance. Just sit with yourself. And don't force the answers to come. Just let them come to you at their own time. Especially if it's that first hour or two. Drop the expectation that the breakthrough will come in that first hour. That's just the beginning. And I just found it so funny, like looking back at it. Like I was sitting in bed, I was just like, I was talking to my spirit team and also to the mushroom energy. And I'm like, man, guys, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on with me. Like, I'm not getting it. And then I just gave myself some grace. And I said, look, you don't have to do anything here. Just relax and let the mushrooms do the work. I'm such a big fan of doing the work, like taking responsibility for the work. But in this particular case, let the mushrooms do the work. Just sit still. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to rush to the answers. And maybe there's a lesson for life there as well. If you're trying to manifest something, if you're trying to get to somewhere, yes, keep going in that direction, but trust the divine timing. Don't try to make it happen fast. Just take it one step at a time and let the answers, the opportunities, the resources, the manifestations come to you in their own time. It took me that many hours to change my frequency from whatever that frequency was in the beginning of frustration to later on in the trip where it was clarity and love and light. It took as long as it took, and there's no amount of hustling that would have made it faster. And that the hustling, in fact, was also contributing to the resistance, thinking that I have to be doing something right now. So hopefully this helps someone with their trips, their resistance. The next time you're having a difficult moment, breathe into it, be still, listen to the music or turn off the music, just be with yourself and do absolutely nothing for a little while and just see how your mood and the flow of the trip and your brain, how it starts changing and shifting over the course of the trip. I hope this helps someone out there. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.